Echo, and HarperAudio present The Maverick's Museum, Albert Barnes and His American Dream, by Blake Gopnik. Read by Jeremy Arthur. For my parents, Erwin and Myrna, who taught me to think and see. Prologue. The sun was setting on the unseasonably cold evening of March 21, 1924, when yellow cabs began to pull up in front of the grand old brownstone of the Civic Club, a meeting place for New York's progressive elite on 12th Street in Greenwich Village. From Harlem and other black enclaves came a crowd of African-American writers, including the young poets Langston Hughes and Gwendolyn Bennett, as well as the new minted novelists Walter F. White and Jessie Fawcett, all in their best evening clothes. They were joined by the philosopher Alain Locke, a professor at Howard University in Washington, who was a Harvard graduate and Rhodes Scholar, and by the activist and intellectual W.E.B. Du Bois, fresh from a trip to West Africa as President Coolidge's minister plenipotentiary. Bourgeois neighborhoods of the Upper East Side and Brooklyn Heights delivered up leaders in progressive white culture such as H.L. Mencken and Carl Van Doren. They were joined by Horace Liverwright and the other white publishers and editors daring to promote the new Negro movement, just then being defined by the evening's black authors. Even as cabs and passengers were gathering around the Civic Club doors, they found themselves giving way before a monster of a Packard sedan, a 7-seater straight-eight with butter-yellow wheels, a body painted indigo blue, and fenders and headlamps custom enameled in black. Climbing out of his seat up front, a chauffeur swung open the carpeted door of the passenger compartment to release an ox of a man in a double-breasted greatcoat and fedora. White hair above beetling dark brows gave him the look of an aging vice cop, someone who hit first and asked questions later, as this man did in all cultural fights. He was Albert Barnes, coming in from Philadelphia, where he'd first earned a fortune selling Argyrol, the gonorrheal antiseptic he'd invented, and then gone on to collect and show and throw punches for some of the newest modern art. Cross him in matters aesthetic, and you were likely to be outed for clandestine fornication. He kept bail bonds at hand in case of arrest for libel. He happily admitted that his specialties were vituperation and profanity. He offered to settle art world arguments with his fists. That night in New York, Barnes, in a friendly mood, was joining a banquet attended by something like 200 people, both black and white, in a city where the color line still went largely uncrossed. They were meeting in New York's only integrated private club. Du Bois had been a charter member. The affair was organized by Charles Spurgeon Johnson, the black activist who edited the Urban League's new Opportunity magazine, joined by Locke as the evening's master of ceremonies. The supper has long been considered the Harlem Renaissance's coming-out party, the very words used to describe it in the next issue of Opportunity. It had been conceived to bring together a new generation of black talent with white power players who had vision enough to appreciate the significance of their work for America and present-day culture at large, as Locke wrote in his letter of invitation to Barnes. The collector must have been surprised to be counted among those visionaries. Some of the banquet's diners might have read, and a few might even have remembered, the passing notice New York newspapers had given to Barnes's announcement a year earlier that he had plans for a museum near his suburban mansion on Philadelphia's ritzy Main Line. It would display the 600-odd works of radically modern art he'd amassed over just his first decade of buying. Masterpieces that precious few of Barnes's contemporaries would have seen as museum-worthy. The press noted Barnes's stockpile of 150 Renoirs, 50 Cézannes, 22 Picassos, and 12 Matisses, as well as his interesting collection of African sculpture, believed by critics to be the most complete in existence. Few guests at the Civic Club would have known more than that about this collection, or its owner. Among those jazz-age partiers, the 52-year-old chemist stood out as notably stodgy. So after listening to several speakers' hopeful remarks about the bright future that must be just around the corner for America's black creators, they sense within their group a spiritual wealth which, if they can properly expound, will be ample for a new judgment and reappraisal of the race, said Locke. Barnes's fellow
Sample complete. Ready to continue?